What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Eric Wilson. New York Rangers coming off a big 2-1 victory over Carolina last night, looking good, 6 points away from clinching a spot in the 2023 postseason. The regular season rapidly coming to a close. We want to go over 5 keys to finishing the regular season strong, finish it on the right foot, and entering the postseason with a lot of momentum for the New York Rangers. We're going to go ahead and break down those 5 keys for you, discuss, give you our analysis. But before we do, make sure to leave a like if you do enjoy this episode and subscribe to the channel if you're new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. But without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today, my friend? How are you feeling coming off of last night's victory?
I mean, it feels good. Carolina is obviously a very good team. They beat us first, and then we went in and beat them. And, at some point in the playoffs, if the Rangers do make it far, we're probably going to end up seeing Carolina at some point. So the amount of times we played them this season, it's good to know that we do have the ability to beat them. So it always makes me feel pretty confident. And as you mentioned, we're 6 points away from clinching a divisional playoff spot. Carolina also last night, despite losing, had just clinched a playoff spot. I believe it's due to the fact that Montreal also took a loss last night. So I know the Rangers, I believe, next play tomorrow against Florida, which I'm not going to say it's going to be an easy game, but it's definitely going to be easier than the last stretch we've had against a couple of divisional opponents. So hopefully by tomorrow night, we'll be within 2 victories of clinching a playoff spot. So that's always good, but I guess we just got to get into figuring out how we're going to be able to do that and finish off the season strong.
Yeah, so let's go over some of these ways. Let's go over the first key to finishing the season strong. And I think this is a big one, like a really big one, a slept on one. And I think it's something that over the past few weeks, we've really realized the value of Lindgren, Ryan Lindgren, him being out of the lineup. Once he returns to full health, that's going to be huge for the New York Rangers because having him come into the lineup, come out of the lineup, all of that, and of course his extended absence from the lineup, the defense is by far the weak point for the New York Rangers right now. Lindgren, you could argue that he is one of the most valuable players on the Rangers because when he's on the ice, it's a completely different team defensively. So, Eric, what are your thoughts on Ryan Lindgren and just the impact that he has on this team when he's on the ice?
I mean, we've mentioned it in the past before. We have a lot of talented defensemen on the team, like Keandre Miller, like Adam Fox, but none of them really bring like true core defensive values like Ryan Lindgren does. He's a very big physical player. He's very gritty, and he's the type of player that you really need in the postseason. I know I mentioned this a couple episodes ago. Just look back at last season's playoffs. We played really well, and then as soon as Lindgren was injured for most of that series against Pittsburgh, we kind of fell off a little bit and went down 3-0 against them. And then once Lindgren came back, we were able to make that comeback and then make it all the way within 2 games of the Stanley Cup final. So having Lindgren not played for a while, it's going to take him a little bit to get back onto the ice and get comfortable again. We saw him play that first game against Carolina, and then he took another rough hit, left the bench for a little bit, eventually came back, finished off the game, but then we didn't see him play again last night. So it's a little questionable on where he's at health-wise, but if the Rangers do want to continue to win games, make a push for the Metropolitan Division title and get into the playoffs and make it far, we're going to need Ryan Lindgren back 100%. Adam Fox he's been good still, but he's not the same when he's not playing with his usual defensive partner right there. So we really just need Lindgren back to get comfortable again, just ease his way back into the game of hockey so he's ready to immediately jump into the playoffs and amp up that intensity that we know he can bring.
Yeah, and I'll say you could make an argument that maybe shutting down Ryan Lindgren is the key to succeeding in the postseason, shutting him down for the rest of the regular season, having him at full strength for the postseason. But I think that would kind of be a bad idea for the Rangers because if he's kind of cold and then you just throw him into the lineup for the postseason, he's not going to be 100%. They got to try and work him back in. Hopefully he gets healthy. And so those final few games of the regular season, he can finish it out strong, get some momentum going into the postseason. I think that's big. I will say, though, Ben Harpur, Nico Mikkola, they've held it down. They've been good enough without Lindgren in the lineup. But, of course, we know that we do need Lindgren in the lineup, as we just explained. But let's go over the next key to victory, to finishing the regular season strong. That's going to be that Igor and the top 6 need to continue to dominate. Igor Shesterkin's been amazing in his last 5 games, 4-1, .946 save percentage, 1.8 GAA. He's been a monster. And then, of course, just the top 2 lines, the top 6 has been really, really incredible. But I will say there is one massive criticism that I have for the top six right now. I've got a stat here that I want to bring up about Artemi Panarin, and this was before last night's game, so this number actually could have grown. But Artemi Panarin has the third most turnovers in the NHL with 95 giveaways. He sits behind Geno Malkin and David Pastrnak, but that's a big problem, and we've been talking about that for a couple of weeks now, Eric. So, what do you think the problem is for Artemi Panarin? Why is he turning it over so much? Why is he struggling to, keep his consistency? Because that's really the key here is for that top six. We want them to remain consistent, keep dominating, but they do have their moments where they start to struggle, and a lot of it has to do with Artemi Panarin turning the puck over. So, what's the key for him to fix that so that the Rangers can keep that consistency?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that Panarin always tries to do too much. He's always looking for that extra pass to make it like an extra pretty move to try to get around someone. And those are valid criticisms. But if you really think about it in the grand scheme of things, you look at those three guys you mentioned, Panarin, Malkin, Pastrnak. Those are like three of the best forwards in the entire league. There's very few players that are all around 100% perfect players besides like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl right now. So that is a very, very large criticism on Panarin that does need to be worked on a little bit during practice and stuff. But you look at the other contributions that Panarin has made for the team recently. Like last game, Panarin had a goal and an assist. He's been really good in his last couple of games. So I can't judge him too much for it. Him and the entire top six have been playing really well recently, pretty much carrying the offense. I know the first goal that was scored last night by Panarin was assisted by Tarasenko and Zibanejad. And then the Fox goal, the game-winning goal last night, was also assisted by Panarin and Zibanejad. So that first line, while they do lack defensively a little bit, giving up turnovers, not really forechecking or back-checking that much, they're producing points. And as long as that continues to happen, I think it's going to be okay. And I think the effect that Panarin's turnovers do have will be a little less drastic once Ryan Lindgren is back, so we can have someone who's actually capable of saving those plays rather than just having subpar defense, letting up odd man rushes as well. So I think that'll all just work itself out when like point one is fixed. Point two will just kind of work itself out as well. But overall, with the top six, everyone has been contributing. Tarasenko's been on fire. Zibanejad's been on fire. As we know, it's March. Panarin just went over. Trocheck has been really good point per game recently, besides like the last two games, I believe. And then, Kreider's been playing good too, and Patrick Kane. So they're all doing very well. And I guess that's just like a good segue into the next point about who hasn't been playing that well.
Yeah, we'll dive into that, but let me go over some of the stats for the top six first because you just mentioned how well these guys have been playing. And I know we've been talking about it being Mika Magic March. It's low-key. I know we just gave a little bit of criticism to Artemi Panarin for his turnovers, but it's low-key been Artemi Panarin Magic. He's got 5 goals and 8 assists in his last 10 games. That's compared to Mika Zibanejad, who has 5 goals and 7 assists. So Artemi Panarin actually the leading point scorer over the last 10 games. You mentioned it, though. Tarasenko on fire. He has the least amount of time on ice from the top six, but he still has 1 goal and 5 assists. Kreider, 5 goals, 0 assists. Trocheck, 0 goals, but 8 assists. And then Kane with 3 goals, 4 assists. So everyone's producing points in that top six, but none more than that dynamic duo of Artemi Panarin and Mika Zibanejad. They have been phenomenal. But let's talk about who hasn't been phenomenal. Eric, you're right. This is a good time to segue into the kid line. Third key here is that the kid line needs to start producing. Lafreniere in the last 10 games, 3 goals. Filipino, 1 goal, 1 assist. Capo Caco, 1 goal, 2 assists. They're not doing enough. Now, listen, they're not bad players by any means, but they do need to be better. Eric, what's the key to having this kid line turn around? And again, we know how valuable that kid line can be because last postseason, they were the catalyst to getting that deep into the postseason. That's how we got so far because the kid line really turned it on. They were playoff performers. But right now, regular season, they've gone stagnant. And the Rangers are feeling that kind of, mundane performance out of the kid line. So how do they turn this around, start to heat things up before the postseason?
I think the best way for Gerard Gallant to make this happen is to just give them more ice time and let them play a little bit more because we know what they can do. We've seen them break out this season so far, and we've seen them be really successful earlier on in the season. And recently, they've kind of just gone dry. Hedl had a goal recently. He broke that goal drought. We thought that maybe, hopefully, that would just help him like break the ice and get out there and continue to score. But he's kind of just quieted down again. Kakko has just been out there. Kakko looks good. He's like probably besides Patrick Kane, one of the best stick handlers on the team. So he looks strong. He's just not finding the back of the net. And then Lafreniere, I know you mentioned he had a couple points in his last 10, but if you just like shorten that window down to his last 5, 0 points at all. So like those points that Lafreniere has are not even recent whatsoever. And this isn't even one of those situations where like we should probably break up the line. The chemistry isn't working well because, as we mentioned in point 2, the top 6 is working so perfectly that you don't want to break them up either. And you're also not going to see any of the kids playing down on the 4th line because the 4th line has been playing really well. So the 3rd line right now, the kid line, is kind of just the odd man out right there. So there's really not much that the team can do rather than just have them practice more and play more together. Eventually something's going to change. They're going to start scoring goals. We know they can. We've seen them do it. And hopefully it'll just happen soon because we don't want to enter the postseason with the kid line being cold. We're going to be immediately just dropped into an all-out offensive frenzy trying to make our way through the Eastern Conference to make it to the Cup Finals. So just get them on the ice more, let them find that chemistry again, and hopefully they'll just slowly heat up until right when the postseason starts and they're just back in their prime along with the other 3 lines that are already playing phenomenally.
Yeah, and I think that I have a stat here that can kind of like shed some light on that because you're saying, Capo Caco looks good, but he's not finding the back of the net, and kind of what you were saying with getting everyone to click and get on the same page. I think there's a shot disparity here that's pretty significant and worth noting. You've got Lafreniere, who over the last 10 games has taken 14 shots. And then Philip Hedl, who's taken 20 with only 1 goal. So it's almost like he's just unlucky at this point. Like he's doing the right thing. He's being aggressive, but maybe he needs to tone it down because Capo Caco with only 8 shots in the last 10 games, not enough aggression out of him. I think that he needs to be more aggressive and maybe Philip Hedl needs to take it back just a step. And I think that there just needs to be a little bit more of that extra pass on that kid line. Like I think that that's a big disparity there from 20 shots out of Philip Hedl. I mean, take a look at the rest of these lines. Zibanejad only has 18 shots in the last 10 games. Panarin has 20 shots in the last 10 games, and he's playing 5 more minutes per game. So there's something with Philip Hedl to be said there. I think that when you look at the stats on that kid line in the last 10 games, there's something to be said about him putting up 20 shots while Capo Caco has only put up 8. I think that they need to spread the puck around just a little bit more, make a couple extra passes, and hopefully they'll start putting the puck in the back of the net. But I don't know. That's just kind of my take on that from looking at the stats. But let's go over the next key to victory, and that's that the team needs to play a full 60 minutes. I mean, this is a good one because how many times have we seen the Rangers come out to a hot start, get a lead, and then just teeter off and blow it, right? That happened 2 games ago against Carolina. There is no excuse for losing that game. They should have won that game. They absolutely choked in the final period. That was an atrocious 3rd period. But in this past game, they won, but they had a bad first period. Rangers outshot 13-3 in the first 10 minutes last night, tied it halfway through the second, and took lead early in the third. But it's kind of just strange how this team just has no consistency. They can't play 60 minutes, and it's very concerning because in the postseason, you bet your ass you need to play 60 freaking minutes of hockey. So having them really slow in the first and then pick it up in the third, sometimes they're going to come up short from that. But then also having them come off to this hot start in the first and then just teeter off and blow a lead in the third, that's going to cause some real heartbreaking losses in the postseason. So what's the key here, Eric, to playing a full 60 minutes of hockey and starting to secure some handed victories?
I mean, I think it's 100% a mindset thing from the team right now because I mean, in the playoffs, the intensity is so much higher than it is in the regular season. We're like, yeah, sure. Last night against Carolina, we had like a pretty rocky first period. Igor kept us in it, but then we were able to just come back and like win it all. If that happened in the playoffs, that's game over right there. And, Rangers fans should know that the first 10 minutes of a game can pretty much decide how the rest of it goes. I mean, you look back a couple games against Nashville, first 10 minutes of that first period, we scored 6 goals. There was no way that Nashville was coming back from that whatsoever, And then you can play pretty much like the entire first 2 periods really well, have like a nice 2-goal lead, but you can't get comfortable with it. You need to act like you're down 2 because it's like super easy to just go into a third period with a lead, think you're going to win, and then the other team just comes out looking hungry for that comeback and then just outplay you, outscore you, and then that's how you choke. And that's been a consistent problem with the Rangers so far this season. There's been very few games where we've come out and played a full first, second, and third period, giving it all of our strength and everything that we got. And that's going to be a very important mindset going into the playoffs, knowing that if you want to win, if you want to make it far, you can never go out there on the ice and just act like everything's okay. You need to play every situation like it's the game on the line. Otherwise, the other team is just going to pick up on that outsmart you, outplay you, and we are going to lose very quickly if we continue to just play leisurely in the playoffs.
Yeah, there's no room for leisure in the postseason. It start and it never says stop. It just go all the way through full 60 minutes. But let's talk about that fifth and final key, and that's that the power play needs to find some consistency. Eric, I know you have some stats on the power play in the recent games. It's been really inconsistent. What's the key? What are the stats that you've got for us, and what is the key to turning that around?
I mean, the main stat I have comes from last night against Carolina. And it also just ties back into that other stat we said where when we were outshot 13-3 in the first 10 minutes of the first period, during that time, the Rangers had nearly 2 full 5-on-3 power plays, and neither of them scored. So despite that, like, we only put up 3 shots during that time, but like almost 4 minutes of that 10, we had 2 extra men on the ice compared to them. So I'm not going to sit here and bash the Rangers power play because it has been good. You know, there are some games where we go out there and we go like 4 for 4 on the power play, but then we have these perfect opportunities like against Carolina where it's like, oh, 4 minutes of 5-on-3, the Rangers are definitely going to score at least one. And then we only go out there and put up 3 shots. So it's not a matter of how good the power play is or how good the penalty kill is. It's a matter of consistency where going into the postseason in this final stretch of the season where teams are looking to clinch, teams are looking to climb their way into a playoff spot or like a wild card spot, you need to capitalize on these opportunities. It's very rare that the Rangers are going to have another like 4-minute 5-on-3 right there. And if that happens again and we don't score again, that's a problem. You know, it's like God just came down and handed us this opportunity to take a lead on Carolina and we wasted it. So it's not really a problem that has a simple solution. It's just continue to work through the lines, build up that chemistry during practice, and figure out a strategy to capitalize on these power plays. Because again, going throughout the rest of the season and into the postseason, if you don't capitalize on these opportunities, it will be a very short-lived playoff run.
Yeah, 100%. Fighting through the adversity is the key for the New York Rangers, and I just think finding that consistency and that killer mentality is going to be huge, and that's what they need to iron out before we get to the postseason. So these final games in the regular season, I want to see the Rangers finish strong, as we discussed in today's episode, see them pick up a few more wins, officially clinch that playoff berth really soon, and then go into the postseason hot, ready to go. Pause. Let's see the Rangers win some playoff hockey, though. So make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this episode. Comment your thoughts on the topic down below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new and ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. We will catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.